Hi aspirants, welcome to Vishnu IAS Academy. As we had said already, we have started a new program called Prakriti. Here we cover all your environmental foundation course as well as the advanced material that are required for your environmental course that is present in both UPSC and other state PSCs. Today here we are going to discuss Environmental Protection Act of 1986. This is very basic and one should be knowing the background and what international conventions has led to formation of this policy, and also what are the drawbacks that are included in this policy and how we are coming up with new amendments and what is the current relevance that is present to this policy as of today. So here we go. See, when we see the background, during 1970s, decade of 1970s, there was no comprehensive policy that covered all the pollution, all the details that should be answered back then. So back then we had Water Prevention Control of Pollution Act 1974, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution 1981. But these were not comprehensive. They were independently answering few of the problems that were faced back then. So we have come up with a comprehensive policy of environmental protection policy in the year 1986. Here at the national level, MC Mehta judgment, right to environment, is part of Article 21. It was said in MC Mehta, a Supreme Court judgment. So here when you write an answer regarding environment, as I already told in many of the videos, any single subject, any subject can't lie in isolation. Every subject should be read in a comprehensive manner relating to each and every subject. So when we read the environmental protection policy, that did not happen in isolation. It was in a coincidence with the political happenings that is happening not only in India but also around the world. See here, when we look at the national level, this was a prominent judgment that talked about right to environment. So here you have to mention about this in the environmental protection policy when you write an answer. So here they said right to environment is part of Article 21, which says right to life. And when we see the international happenings back then, there was a Stockholm Convention in the year 1972 in which India participated. India signed this Stockholm Convention. How did India sign? Based on Article 253, India can sign in some international convention and adopt it to the national policy. So these are the articles that are involved, and these are the happenings that were happening not only at the national level but also at the international level. So this is the background that is going on for environmental protection policy. When we see the provisions, what are the provisions of environment? We said the previous policies were not comprehensive. Then what are the provisions that are included in this environmental protection policy that made it comprehensive back then, and what were the amendments? In order to bring the amendments, you should first understand the basic provisions that were present in the policy back then. See, the provisions include, back then it defined pollution, pollutants and hazardous substances. Till then, there was no proper definition for environment, there was no definition for pollution, there was no definition for pollutants and hazardous substances. When you define things, what happens? It becomes easy to identify the problem. Here what happens? It was based on the polluter pays principle, on which this can be asked as a prelims question as well. It can be asked this way. Polluter pays principle is connected to which policy in India? This can be asked as a question. So this is based on polluter pays principle, and wide range of powers were given to central government. These are the this laid foundation for centralization of environmental policies. So these are the basic provisions that were covered in the environmental protection policy in 1986. And when we see what were the rules covered, this becomes more important because previously there were many questions in UPSC in prelims related to this, and here we have a current affairs related to rules 1989 for regulating genetically modified crops. So you have to know what all rules were covered under environmental protection policy that have some or the other connection with the current happenings around India. So here in environmental protection policy of 1986, we have covered rules of these rules have their foundation in this policy. So rules 1989 for regulating genetically modified crops, Environment Impact Assessment Rules 2006, Eco-Sensitive Zones Rules 1988, Coastal Regulating Zones 2018 based on Shailesh Nayak committee recommendations. So these were the things that have their basis in environmental protection policy of 1986. So you should remember this because this will have some or the other impact, and any given day you have to mention these rules and committees and these policies in your answers, because when you write, any day, any given day, when you write an answer, particularness is appreciated. Generalization is never appreciated, because everybody can write, the background, everybody can write the background of environmental protection policy, but the rules cover under should be learnt in particular, so that you can mention them, as an example or something. As of today, when you see there is a current affair that is going related to genetically modified crops, then you should know what, where is the foundation that has been laid in India for genetically modified crops, under which rules, and that rules are covered under which policy. Should be knowing all this. Before anything, okay, at international level, I already told you what laid foundation for the environmental protection policy that India have signed. So it was United Nations Conference on Human Environment that happened in the year 1972. By the year 2022, it completed 50 years. So this is a landmark. See, whenever it is very favorite for UPSC to ask, whenever a topic completes 50 years or 25 years or 100 years or 75 years, there's a high chance that can be asked as a question. For that matter, not only UPSC, any state PSC can ask it as a question. So here it has completed 50 years. So you should be knowing about it. And one more wonderful thing is that it was back then in 1972, it was conducted in the year, conducted on the dates of June 5th and 6th. Every year we celebrate June 5th as National Environmental Day, World Environmental Day. So here, first it was why it is so important. It is the first global convergence on environment. See, for the first time, all the countries around the world have come together to conduct a conference. So it was the first global convergence on environment. So back then it was the first thing. So we have to remember, and this laid foundation in India for the environmental protection policy in the year 1986. And here, what was the theme? Only One Earth was the theme then. Okay, let me ask you, what is the theme of World Environmental Day this year? Please let me know it in the comments, because you have some connection with this theme, okay? And also, see, when we celebrate particular days, who has given the day, you should be mentioning that things. And when I say United Nations Conference on Human Environment, you people in particular, this is also known as Stockholm Conference. So when I say something like that, you people should be googling it and writing all the major provisions related to it, in which year it has come, what implications did it have on India. These are the particular things. For this is the standard procedure in which you make notes for every environmental, or for that matter any topic on environment or any subject for that matter. So here we complete the what laid foundation at international level for India's environmental protection policy. And here next we have, see, every policy when adopted or when formulated will cover current, back then you might be having problems back then. So you will be answering the problems for the next 10 to 20 years. As the time passes, every topic or every issue will re-emerge itself and causes some issues. Something which is right today might be wrong 50 years later, but the basic principles should stand still. The same happened with Environmental Protection Act also. See, it has drawbacks like complete centralization that doesn't give power to state. Here, whenever, I already told you, whenever you read a subject, you don't read it in isolation. You have to read it comprehensively. So India being a federal setup, it is a complete centralization is something that drags powers from states. So the drawback of Environmental Protection Act is complete centralization and no public participation. It is something like you make a policy, you want to protect the environment, and there is a least participation from public that doesn't serve any purpose. And incomplete coverage of pollutants. See, when as I already told you, when the time passes, the problems emerge. As the lifestyle which we are adopting to is very modern, we come up with many major pollutants nowadays. So we in environmental protection policy, there was no there was nothing called noise pollution. There was nothing about transport. There's a lot of problem that is going because of transport and all that were not covered it was incomplete coverage of pollutants in Environmental Protection Act of 1986. So what can we do when there are certain drawbacks? We come up with amendments. So here certain amendments are proposed. So there is a high chance that environmental protection policy can be asked as a question, because there were certain amendments that are proposed recently. So you should be knowing about what amendments have been proposed. See, decriminalization of existing provisions. That means, for every simple violation of the act, you can't keep criminalizing people. So decriminalization of existing provisions. You see, point 1 are 2 connected, because grievous injury or loss of life will be punished, but existing provisions which are very silly, you can they have proposed to decriminalize those provisions. And instead of imprisonment, creation of environmental protection fund. This is something very positive. The amendment proposed is very positive, because instead of imprisonment, creation of environmental protection fund, that would serve the purpose, serve the purpose of creating funds for the protection of environment. So these are the major amendments that are proposed very recently. So when we are learning any topic, we have to see the current relevance, because any given day, any question asked will not be asked in violation. That can be asked something like, this can be asked like, what is the current relevance that is happening to the topic, and then a question will be framed. So we can see the current relevance, because Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, which is a part of Environmental Protection Act 1986, has given approval for GM mustard recently, very recently, 3 days back it has got approval. So what you have to do is, you have to learn about genetically modified crops. Now how you will make the notes? What are genetically modified crops? What are the issues related? What can be done? Like, you have to have an opinion related to genetically modified crops, because this is a controversy. This is a controversial topic, so you have to have. And also recently mustard has got approval. So these are the basic background features why we have drafted an environmental protection policy. Not at the national level, what was the situation back then, at international level what was going, and also what are the provisions involved in Environmental Protection Act, what are the drawbacks, and also what were the amendments recently proposed, and the current relevance are included in this video. In order to get more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel.